Hello.
Good afternoon. Hello.
Hi.
CTO strategies today with Sander, Adrian. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, it's a very hot summer day. Hoping your AC is working. Mine isn't, unfortunately. So
Mine is just a ventilation thing, but yeah, better than nothing.
Sander and I had a conversation 2 years ago where we had a 3-hour conversation, I think from the same studio. Sander, you're still at iBoot. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, I still am. Oh, yeah. I just opened up the the podcast on my phone, so I have the sound coming back to me. I still do, actually. Wait, just a second. Yeah, I'm still at iBoot, and I'm truly still enjoying it.
I wanted to invite you because I got really inspired by our last conversation, and I saw your recent presentation deck that spoke about specifically how to get unstuck. And I really enjoyed hearing your contrast on safe and everything agile asterisk implementation is probably nonsense, and you need to become more pragmatic if you're a strategic leader. And everybody just sort of, I can imagine everybody just getting a question mark in their forehead about, okay, how do you do that? And I figured that's a great topic to talk about.
I love that. So let's discuss that.
So ground rules for today. We've set expectations with our audience regarding if you're a CTO, if you're in a strategic position, how to even identify that you're stuck. Like what is a real litmus test that you will trust to tell you that, hey, things could be better, that it's the right time to actually make a change. What can you do? What kind of different kinds of stuckness are there, and like how does it differ in different industries, different sizes, different scales? And what do you do for maintenance about, how do you prevent your team and yourself from being stuck, and your organizations and your clients from being stuck? And what do you do when you do? Because I imagine it's not a perfect streak, and it's probably a bumpy road. It will be great to, it always is. So to our audience, let us know that chat works. Every now and then there's a little bit of technical hoopla. Let us know where you're tuning in from, what your role in the company is, what kind of industry you're a CTO in. If you're not a CTO, how much of your time is spent on leadership stuff. And just dump your questions in. We will take every 15 minutes where I will take a glance on the comments and present them on screen like Adrian just did to tackle it.
That's a proof that it's actually working.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sander, where would you normally start off this conversation? Like, why is being stuck so important to you?
Well, it is. So the whole world and our industry, in more specifically, are changing rapidly, right? We see wars, sicknesses, epidemics, and on the brighter side, AI and a lot of technology changes, and the speed the speed at which the world is changing is increasing. And it only goes faster and faster. So for a lot of organizations who are who've been in their industry for quite some time, let's say you're a tech company, you've been in here for 20, 25, maybe 30 years, or you are an insurance company that started automating stuff in the 1970s and now have 18 million lines of COBOL, for example, right? So, well, it actually happens. I used to be the CTO of a company that had that actually. So, and then the question is, how are you going to make the next? So let me. I'm a bit chaotic every now and then. I come up with stories when I'm like, I used to be in the partner advisory council at Microsoft for .NET. So that was a long time ago. So 2006, 2007, I think. And what we did is we went to Redmond and we talked to execs at Microsoft about what they were doing, and there were people from the industry. And at one point, there was this guy came in and he said, so we said, so what are you going to do? And he said, well, we're going to build data centers, and we're going to build them in containers, and we're going to sink them off into the sea because of the cooling and stuff. And I'm like, we were like, why are you building data centers? And now, like, it's 2024, everybody knows why, right? They had no idea, basically. They were just building data centers, and like, what are you going to do with it? And then so, well, we're probably going to run people's software on here. And we're like, what is that, right? And does it have a name? No, we just came up with it. And so we're going to experiment with this because, and this is the key point, is that they said at some point in time, everybody has Windows, everybody has Office. And then the question is, how are we going to make the next $10 billion?
What do you do when you saturate the market? Like, what's next?
For instance, right? That's one example. And we were like, we don't know. And then the story was quite nice because we said, okay, so what are you going to do? And how much money do you have to do that? And they said, well, he said, I just got funded from Bill Gates with $3 billion to build data centers. And they did not have a business model for it. And we actually discussed what the business model could be, and we didn't know either, right? Because the cloud at that point didn't exist. We had never heard about AWS or whatever. It didn't exist at that point in time. So they went out to ask the question, how do we make the next $10 billion? For most companies, it's going to be, especially when you're not like a very big bank or insurance company or whatever, but most companies are a lot smaller than that, right? Like, for instance, the first company I work for, iBoot, it's a company of around 100 million euros, and we have 100 people on board. Companies that size, they usually do not have enough technical people and knowledge on board to be able to keep up with everything that's happening in this world, right?
They have more appetite than capacity, and then there's that constant friction.
Companies always have, right? And
Yeah,
so to give you another example, I used to work for a company that sort of invented the smart thermostat about 15 years ago. And what they did is they invented it. Was a nice device. They started selling it, and there was a big energy company that started giving it away when people got into a new contract with them, and it was quite cool. So it was a very new device. It was basically, it looked like an iPad, but you put it on the wall, and then they started adding more features to it, and it got more popular. And then it got to a point that it actually reached the peak of its popularity at some point. So there were no new sales anymore. And they thought they would be able to survive by just adding new features to it. Like they started adding traffic information to it, right? To a device that's hanging on your wall, traffic information. Pretty cool. And they started diving into smart data when it comes to your energy usage. And so they did really cool things with it, but nobody wanted it. So at that point in time, their technical debt was so big that they couldn't maintain it, and they made a lot. The whole thing cost a lot more money than they actually made, so they vanished. Stuff like that happens, and it happens all the time. So the question is basically, if you are in a situation that you have like tremendous amount of technical debt, like the insurance company, they had 18 million lines of COBOL and 12 million lines of Java, and they try to move away from that because mostly the COBOL developers, they wanted to retire at some point. And they couldn't. And they spent 12 years trying to get rid of it. They didn't. It didn't work.
The problem is on some point you start a legacy migrations to something new, and it takes so long that you need the next legacy migration to get out of the legacy migration, which is a never-ending story of migrations, which is then your normal life.
Yes, and if the first, if you so as a result, what happens is these projects never finish, which means you never get rid of your legacy code, and then you're screwed basically.
And also, then the unfinished progress also bloats it even more compared to not doing anything in the first place.
That's why the same company ended up with 12 million lines of Java too, right? So they had like 30 million lines of code just breaking, and they couldn't get rid of it. So. And then the question is, how do you survive? And so that's
because survival, I imagine, looks like 100% of our capacity will go towards keeping the lights on and tech debt.
Yes.
And now you need to tell stakeholders until the foreseeable future that there's going to be no new innovative stuff, no new features, no market response.
This is more common than not. I think this is the reason why so many small companies or medium-sized companies don't grow anymore. They had a push in the beginning where they were pretty pragmatic, and then they maybe were a little bit too pragmatic in that moment, and they built up tech debt, and then they couldn't work on the tech debt because they weren't aware of tech debt. That's another problem. So you aren't aware of that problems, then people switch and you just keep on building. And on some point you just put on top of that instead of fixing things. And I think this is the big problem there.
And that is happening to many, many companies out there. So besides, so I'm freelance, right? So I do small gigs next to my main occupation, which is being the CTO for this e-commerce company. So I go into other companies. Companies often ask me, could you come and have a look at what we're doing? And it's quite often the stakeholders that, the shareholders that ask me to do that. And I'll go in and I'll look around and I talk to people, look at code and stuff. And these problems actually happen very frequently, especially with these mid-sized companies that grew really rapidly and went into they got into lots of technical debt, or like having code bases with no unit tests. So at some point they don't know how to change them anymore. Or for instance, here at iBoot, they had, when I joined them 3.5 years ago, they hadn't been able to release their mobile app in 2.5 years. So this is an e-commerce company, right? So basically, if you have that, so marketing got totally stuck. They couldn't do anything anymore because they just couldn't handle it. And it's like those kinds of companies that I really like helping out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The company that built the smart thermostat, actually, they were taken over by the large energy company that was giving their device away, and they sort of they sort of smashed the company and then it stopped to exist. And stuff like that happens, right? And it's terrible. Or another company that I worked for in the past decade is a company that built software for the insurance market. Their main product is a COBOL code base that they still work on with 20 people. And they're really good at it because they've been doing the same stuff for 30 years. That code base gets compiled to Java every night. That gets released to their about 500 customers around the country, or even in other countries, that install it then on their own JBoss container somewhere, and then it sort of continues. And they have no way. They want to become a SaaS provider because that's a much more easier model because you can change stuff easier, right? So, but they just couldn't. They just couldn't get rid of it. And at some point, it's going to kill them. And they need to get out of that before that thing happens. That is what I call when companies get stuck. And
so it's about stagnation, primarily due to size and success.
Yes, stagnation is a stage in there, and the other stage is just death, right? It's like it's what I call technical death. It's
yeah, that's good.
I love that.
If you're not selling new products anymore, if you're a product selling company, a software product selling company, or a SaaS provider, and you cannot add stuff to your landscape anymore because it'll fall apart every time you do it. Give me one more example. There's a company that I coached for a bit. They had software to refurbish chemical factories. And they were one of the leaders in that industry. It's a very niche industry, right?
Yeah.
And they had built this product over 15 years, and it was a monolithical code base. That wasn't the main reason, but eventually they got to a point that they couldn't change their code bases anymore. They could not change the database anymore because every time they did, everything fell apart. And their release cycle got longer and longer and longer as a result. And they couldn't push it into the other direction. They eventually were bought by one of their competitors. And I'm not really sure what happened to the stack, but it would surprise me if it's still there.
Yeah. Adrian, you recently reorganized your company. Were you in a similar situation, being stuck?
Yeah, but there's different reasons. So actually, I did it twice. So in my first company, it was a little bit like Sander was describing it. So there were accumulated nearly 15 years of tech there. It's typically, hey, we have started with a solution we bought, then we built on top of that. Then we had some. It is possible on a Windows server to run PHP and C# basically, or ASP in the same website. And we started to do that because it was necessary. And then we built on top of that with a JavaScript framework we have built. And there were so many things. And later on a PHP framework on top of that. And it was a little bit always like we needed to do that because we don't have time to fix with what is below that. So it was always driven. And this is what Sander really pointed out. It is so fast that there was always a driving factor which reduced the time you actually had to fix things. And we were way more, let's say, naive back then, thinking that, we can always fix things later. This is what I hear from so many people today. We can always fix things. No, you can't fix your foundation later. Have you ever tried to remove the foundation of a house and replace it with another one?
Well, a house is not particularly the same, right? So metaphor from houses and software, it's not compatible. But again, yes, you can change stuff later, but it's way more expensive.
No, it's costly, and the time constraints are the problem. So you can actually fix a foundation of a house. It's possible, but extremely expensive to do that because it is actually not worth it. And the point is that, for example, I had that in the tech stack review just a week ago, where I was talking about when you just take a look at the front-end tech stack and you are at a very low level, like taking JavaScript now for the front end, JavaScript, TypeScript, or for example, React on top of that. It is hard to change that, right? So it is not like a little library you add to that and then you change it later. Everything you do is built upon that. So the weight on that single layer is very high. And this is how I count it. So the more, let's say, the more lower you are in that what you need to build, the more complicated it will be to rebuild that. With
Less
one thing,
radius of change, of unmitigated.
you could change that by migration. That's actually not a problem. But that was a good point of Sander's. But if you build another solution on top of that, which is actually the successor solution, but in reality, just the stuff on top because it never successes the other, then you actually have way more weight on the first one, and the second one does have its own weight. And I think this is the problem that tech stack can stack up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this
you don't
is
actually address it.
take, yeah.
You just put band-aids on top of it. Band-aids and band-aids and band-aids.
Yeah.
Sure. Maria had a great comment looking at it from a more tactical perspective. She says, yes, this was the point highlighted by Uncle Bob. Many companies move quickly, but we each release the cost to increase until the company collapses with zero profit. That the tech debt, the tech death that you mentioned, Sander. This is due to code bases with poor quality, lack of testing, and unmaintainable code. And during my podcast, I discussed more about it in depth.
You know what? Yes, we have tech debt, right? Everybody recognizes they have tech debt. Tech debt is also caused by something, right? It's not just about poor code with poor quality or not having tests.
I was just about to ask that. Yeah,
there's an underlying reason for that, because we can. The problem with this is, oh yes, we have tech debt. Yes, it's all the developers' fault. It's
not all tactical, right? Like there's product debt in there, right, as well.
I'm going to make it a bit stronger. None of it is a technical problem.
Mm-hmm. None. So let's linger there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When you say none of it is a technical problem, that means, let me know if I got this right. So the existential problem that the company is facing is not caused by poor code craftsmanship, engineering, etc.
No, it causes poor code.
It causes poor. Okay. So it's the causality loop that you disagree with. Like it's, of course you have it, but that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Right. You have it because you have another problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is way bigger and has nothing to do with tech.
Okay. So what's
cases, right?
So if we now do root cause analysis, like what's one layer deeper? What causes the first step? What causes the first degradation? Culture. And I'm assuming that means leadership. Managers, second line managers, directors, VPs. Not so much the founding team, right? Or
all of
both.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's next? Like why is the culture so?
So what happens in most of these companies is well, there's different causes. So you should probably talk to Kim, my girlfriend. She's doing a lot of research about where is this coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So in the talk I have the Getting Unstuck talk.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the talk I say it's not the tech, it's the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And all technical depth does not come from tech. It comes from the fact that for whatever reason, and that's not technical reasons, people don't do the stuff they need to do. You might say, yeah, they're poorly educated developers. But I think in 2024, most developers will know that you need to write your unit test, that you need to have CI/CD, that you need to have proper pipelines, et cetera, right? So we know that stuff. The problem is that we don't do it. And we don't do it because there's a lot of pressure coming from whoever's putting the pressure on. That depends, and it differs per company.
And Gottfried and Calvin have exactly this conversation right now in the comments. Gottfried mentions technical debt for me is rather a sign of moving too fast as a developer, or better, being pushed too fast by the business.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And the business, of course, is not one. People always say the business, and I do that too, right? We talk about the business all the time, but it's not
they, the capital T, they.
The business doesn't exist, right? It's people. And the thing is, so if you're a small, let's say you start as a small company, right? So there's 2 founders, 2 developers,
15 people. Yeah.
And they start writing stuff. And that's how a lot of companies start, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is they write stuff. It sort of works, right? At least it doesn't break. And then they'll put it out into an app store, or they are going to do SaaS or whatever they do, right? And then people start using it, right? And they get some money, and they're like, oh, we need more. And what can we do next? And then the emphasis is always on adding new stuff to it. However, what happens is that if you're always under pressure to add new stuff to it, you take shortcuts. That's where technical debt comes from. So we take the shortcuts and you know what? We'll skip the test on this one. No, you don't. Yes, we do. So I was at a company a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to the CTO, and I was doing an audit on what they were doing, how they were working, et cetera, et cetera. And I noticed that one of their main code bases does not have any unit tests. I'm like, how is it possible that you allow yourself to not have unit tests? And he said, well, the product people did not want to spend time on them. And I said to him, it's not the product people who should own this, right? It's not.
Yeah, of course.
We don't sell it to them. We can do it with or without. But most companies, the pressure, especially when it's small companies that are founded by two persons who have a very strong influence in the organization, who, when these companies grow and they get older and older, still are there. And are very dominant in an organization like that, and they can say, "No, we need it now. How hard can this be?" And stuff like that. And they're like, "No, we need to build this." And then next week they need to build something else, right? And it's a cultural thing, right? So and from that, so basically to get out of it, you need to change the culture in an organization, and that is extremely hard because it requires strategic thinking, like we need to go away from this point, and then you need to realize, and that's basically leadership in companies, they need to realize that you do need to spend time on being able to get back on track with innovation. And if you just continue working on the products you already have, or on the software that you are maintaining, or just keeping it alive and keeping the lights on, you're not going to move away from where you are. So if you want to be in a better place than you are right now, the only way out is to actually spend time on that.
That's so true. And it is to keep a baseline.
Technical issues. I'm just going to reconnect real quick. You two continue the conversation because my camera
you are stuttering
just gave me a warning. Yeah. Okay, I'll reconnect. Be right back.
Okay. Good. So what have I said just before he said that to me? It's too hot. I forgot. Sorry, I forgot. But I had something to add to what you said beforehand with technical debt. Now, two things. First, the baseline. So we need to keep the baseline. So if we don't set ourselves an engineering baseline, we will always end up in not doing tests and all those kind of things. And this is extremely important to have this baseline in place to make sure that no matter what we do, we make sure that the business can survive. So with business, I mean the entire mission, right? So we as developers or the engineering department is some kind of technical driving force behind the mission. And if we fail by taking shortcuts in the beginning, and then later on, we suffer because of that, and we can't really move because of that anymore. We actually failed as a department by not saying no. And this is one of the big problems. I know that from agency. So go ahead.
So wait, I totally agree with this, right? So and here's the thing: the most important thing you said is because we don't say no. That sentence, if you think about that sentence, right, it is that's the most vital thing there is, because in most organizations, so if you're working in an organization right now, ask yourself, do you feel comfortable with saying no in the organization to whatever, right?
And can you live with the consequences if someone tries to force you otherwise to do it, or even you said no? And this is what I see often. People or engineers feel stuck and think, okay, they said I need to do this. They said I don't need to create or to write tests before I actually do that, or while I do that, doesn't matter. And then on some point later in the stage, you are stuck because things aren't working anymore, and suddenly they point a finger at you and telling you are incompetent in that moment. And that's the problem.
And they're right, actually.
Yeah, because you were actually saying, okay, I'm not acting like an engineer. I don't have a creed right now, a credo. I just do whatever other want from me. This is some form of master and,
There's a bunch of things going wrong here, right? So first of all, somebody saying to a developer, oh, you can do this without writing tests, that's not their job, right? It's our job as developers to say whether or not we can do this. And we shouldn't, by the way, but so it's not a business or a manager or a COO or a product owner or whoever does that who is allowed to tell to you that you shouldn't write tests for this code. That is not their thing. It's like I compare it to doing the dishes, right? You put the dirty dishes in the dishwasher, you run the dishwasher, and then you get the dishes out again, right? Not doing part of that makes the whole cycle go wrong, right? Because if you don't take the clean dishes out and put them back into the cupboards, and so you cannot add more dirty dishes to it. It doesn't work. It's full, right? So that is quite similar to what we do. So there is nobody outside of your own responsibility or your own motivation that says you could do this without test. You should just. It doesn't. You don't even have to talk about writing tests because it's not part of what other people should be concerned about. It's not. It's something you just do. You cannot. It's like I don't have another good example for it, but it's not part of the conversation. It should not be.
I had success selling it.
And then you come back to the fact that if you allow yourself to write code without writing tests, then they're right. If they come back to you and say you're not competent, yes, that is true.
That's
However,
true.
The question comes always back to the fact that do you feel comfortable with saying no? So it's always a cultural thing, right? If you so even the company I'm now working for, right? When I got here 3.5 years ago, people in the tech department did not know how to say no.
Yeah.
So the COO was running the thing, and he's an extremely smart guy, right? And,
They're trying to people please other departments. They're trying to people please other departments way too much.
all the time.
Yeah.
And they were doing so much of that. So what they were basically building is basically patching the existing systems all the time. That was they spent all their time on that. And and because they spent all their time on it, they could not do anything beside that. So the blame they got from the management at that point in time is that they were unable to move away from what they were doing. And the reason for that is they spent all of their time pleasing the rest of the company. So the first thing I did when I got in is I said, well, if we want to get out of this situation where we are totally stuck, because they couldn't release their software anymore. Their website it had an awful layout, and they always said it was on purpose because it's a deal site, right? And I'm like, yeah, but okay.
As an engineer, you should serve the company and not the people. And this is one of those things. The people are the people who tell you, I need to have something urgently. I want to sell it now. Please make it. And you just follow this person, make it very quickly, and then you actually fail. But if you follow the company, if you are loyal to the company, you think long term that you can deliver this month, next month, and in 12 months.
Yeah.
And
true. Very true. Yeah. So what I did when I got here is, and it's a pattern I've been using a lot, and it's the topic basically of this talk as well, is that in most companies that you go to, the available time in the tech department, IT, whatever you call it, is less than the appetite of the company, right?
Yeah.
So. And then you can say, oh, you need to go faster. That's what most companies will do, right? Oh, they need to deliver faster.
Increase capacity.
It's the other way around. You need to make choices, right? And these choices should decide on whether or not you are doing stuff. And that means it's not by going faster so we can do everything. You can never do everything. So you focus on the things that are the most important and the most relevant to do, and the problems that are most relevant to solve in order to break free from being stuck and just doing all sorts of
and it's a moving
things, right?
And it's also a moving target. Even if you when a stakeholder comes to you and you want to people please, you should always treat them like a physician treating a patient who says, I have this and this, prescribe me that, please. And the physician should always say, hold on, what's the problem? Like, I'm not going to prescribe you anything unless I agree with the prescription, because I'm responsible for what happens with your usage of what I'm prescribing to you. Yeah. And I think we should be in that position as engineers. Of course, product people will tell you, we need this feature or lights out. But then it's like, hold on. Like, are we already at that point?
It is often not true. It is very often that, let's say, product owners, salesperson, sometimes the CEO, they want to shine on a specific meeting they have with clients or groups or something like that. And this is just artificial, something very personal of a single person.
No, wait. I'm going to stop here. It's not artificial. It's their world. There's nothing artificial.
But it is. Oh no, I disagree. Hold on. No, because it doesn't have an effect on the long-term business.
You interrupted Adrian while Adrian interrupted me. I want to finish my point. I want to finish my point. Hold on.
It's not for us as tech people to decide whether something is artificial or not.
I say that now as a business person. I'm primarily a business person, not a tech person. And I know those meetings. This is the reason. Sometimes just to finish that right now, you go on such a meeting and suddenly you prepare everything. You've taken 5 shortcuts, tremendously difficult for the future, and suddenly they just say, we have, I have it right now. We have now vacation time. Maybe we move everything 5 weeks, and so you have 5 weeks more time, but maybe we don't. It is not, in most cases, it is just something between the people. And if you can bridge that gap and get a good conversation, so a good connection to the business persons on the other side, and they understand those problems, and you sell the mission, and you sell that you actually can do better for the future, they will actually be likely to buy it if you tell them about long-term success. This is my experience, and I'm not silent on this. It works.
So my point is, when I said it's a moving target, to use it with the physician analogy, is that if the patient, in this case, whoever is asking for it, right? So stakeholder, let's say the customer, the internal customer in the company, whoever is asking for it, it's very likely that a lot of problems in software come from this idea that if they knew the true cost of what it is they're asking for and the total cost of ownership of what they're asking for, they would probably not have an appetite for it. So it is this fallacy between they have an appetite for it because to them it seems a much smaller beast than it actually could be, right? And even the risk of it growing might actually set them off on a different path. But it's because this is very difficult to communicate, because we are talking about projections, potentials, and experience and gut feel, and we got to translate that to data, to engineering experience, to product experience, to business experience, to strategy, to outcomes. And it's very easy to get lost in the noise and somebody get one magnitude of one key element wrong, and you do it, and then you figure out way too long. There's too much project left at the end of your budget. And then, you do another cycle of this. Because it's really hard to say, well, yeah, okay, we ran out of money. We'll never do this again, but now let's do it again. Of course, because what else will you do? It's too late by then. So it's a moving target, right? So even just trying to tell the patient what the side effects of the thing they're asking for in a prescription, even that is a moving target, because software, well, it's soft. Sadly,
right?
And
this is the reason why you need to bridge the gaps between business and development, because in reality, especially in smaller companies up to, let's say, 100 people in total, this is one context. The development and the business is not two separated things. You cannot just exchange those things. The developers can't do anything with the business people, and the business people can't do anything without the engineers. So bridge the gap and then create those understandings. And this is where I had most success with. I actually paid so much personal money because it wasn't working for the majority of my time. It was always seen as a department. And I still suffer today because of decisions we made wrong in the past. To try to be like the business is doing imperative or enforcing an imperative culture on the development, which is wrong in my opinion. And it is not always about, hey, you can become credible as an engineering department as well. You should do. But on some point, the business does have responsibility as well. It's not like, hey, this business just have some deals, we can close it. In reality, if you talk with the people and they understand that the business you close isn't broken in 12 months, they will understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Sander, do you think this is right or wrong?
Yes, it's of course right, but it's also it's like this is like common sense, right? Yes, we need to bridge the gap. Yes, business and tech are one. The question is, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And
let's talk about this.
I figured out how to do that actually. And so here's the thing, right? So the amount of time we have in tech is always less than there's never enough time to do. Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, Conway's right, of course, as he always is. But so, here's the thing: we have less time available, less effort available, less people available in tech than the appetite of the. I like the word appetite. It's a good choice of words. Of the company to have new stuff. So what we did at iWood, and I use the same pattern in the previous 4 companies I'm working for. I'm actually trying to compile this into a book manuscript, but I got stuck because I got stuck because I like writing code a lot more than I like writing text. And every time like past weekend, I was like, oh yeah, I should really work on the manuscript, and then I'm like, no, wait, I'm going to build some code, and then I spent the whole weekend writing code, and
Sander is a fun kind of CTO.
Yeah. It's, but the thing is this, right? So we always have less time available than we would need to do everything that the company wants. That means, as a company, you need to make choices. You need to make choices how tech time is spent, and that is the responsibility of the whole company. So what we did is we created something called the tech board. It's a group of people that together vote and decide on the strategic items that we work on in tech. So it's a group that meets every Thursday, and there's a Jira board, not specifically because I like Jira. I don't like it because I don't understand it, but just to put Post-its on a wall, basically. That's it.
Yeah.
And do that digitally because not everybody's in the office on the same day, right? So we have, as the management team, which I'm part of, we set out the strategy for the company. Where do we want to be this year, next year, From that, I, as the CTO, I sort of distilled a more or less a roadmap.
Yeah.
Whether or not stuff fits on it doesn't actually matter.
Milestones along the way, the order of things.
No milestones. There's no milestones in there. It's just what we want to do, basically.
So a roadmap without a milestone. So I'm assuming.
Yeah. Otherwise, it would be a planning, right?
Yeah. So I'm assuming this means big initiative by Q2, but it can be either A or B, but it's not concrete.
No, it's more or less a direction. So it's the direction I think we should go to with our tech in the company, and that's just high level. However, in the tech board, stuff happens. That is where, if people from anywhere in the company or even from outside the company come in an idea, they can pitch that during the tech board meeting. So they go to the tech board meeting and say, listen, it would really be cool if we could, so it happened this week, if we could, so as long as people ordered and they have not been shipped yet, it would be cool if they could still add stuff to their orders, to their existing orders, so they can go in the same shipment. It's a greener option. It's a cheaper option also for the customer. So that's an interesting project, right? So the manager from logistics pitched that during the tech board meeting. And then we can vote on it. So the first step we do is we try to figure out, ballpark figure, how much work would this be? And we're talking about a couple of months, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. That's more or less it. Then what happens is that as soon as we have that sort of like ballpark estimate, it's not an estimate actually, but it's like just a number, just to give it an idea.
I love where this is going. It's not an estimate, but it's just a number.
Yeah, but it's very inconcrete because we have no idea exactly what to do for it, right? And we can't know because we haven't done this before. But so what happened in the tech board meeting is most of the stakeholders in the company are there, and together we vote. So these bigger topics go on the board. They go into selected for development, and we as the tech team then pick them up. How we pick them up is basically everybody in the company can look at the tech board, right? And then when people on my team are done with something, they're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to pick up that one because that's interesting to me, and I like doing that. And for instance, one of the things we're doing right now is a project around personalization. where we can set brand and taxonomy preferences and stuff like that. And there were two people on my team who said, "Oh yeah, we're going to pick that one up. It's fine." And as long as it's been voted for development, we pick it up.
So if I understood,
I
just want to make a key detail here clear, if I understood it correctly, because I think it's really important for how at least I understand it. So whatever is on the board, there are multiple items on the board.
Yeah.
They're not prioritized.
No.
So the criteria for it going on the board is that nobody on the CTO board will challenge it if the engineering team picks A over B.
No, wait.
So there's no preferences.
Stuff gets on the board because people pitch it.
Okay.
Anyone can pitch it, right, in the company.
Yeah.
And they do. So there's like a long list of stuff that people want to have done. And then we discussed during the tech board. So the major stakeholders are there. So the COO, me as the CTO, our chief marketing officer, people from logistics, from purchasing, from finance, basically the managers of those departments, right? And so that means every time that somebody goes from we're working on it to done, we finish stuff, right? And then people ask to me, because I'm the CTO, like, okay, do you guys have room for something more? And then I'm like, yeah, we can probably do something as long as it's in that direction and that direction. And then we look at the stuff that is okay, and we vote about it. And the nice thing about that is that it creates a common sense between all the different departments in the company where we spend our time on, because time is the most valuable thing we have at tech, right? So that means that if we now are picking up a topic that comes from marketing, the other departments understand that because together they voted for that thing to be the most important one.
So you're monotasking, like you are, like one of the key ingredients here is that it must be possible to, first of all, motivate and inspire, but also to create boundaries about a team. So it's not a team of 5 people building 5 different things. It's a team of 5 people working on one thing together. And then if it's not clear that all 5 of them need to be working on it at the same time, you do 2. They're not.
So it's literally in my current situation, but I follow the same pattern in different organizations of different sizes. My current team is 13 people, right? So 13 of us, that's including me.
Yeah.
So the 13 of us built the software. We decided as a company that we are going to spend 70% of our time on trying to get away from being unstuck. 20% of our time goes into adding small features to existing systems because, well, it needs to be ongoing as well. And 10% is spent on keeping the lights on. So we have a Slack channel for.
But this pattern is a process of elimination, right? So what we want to do doesn't take up full capacity. So we can also do this. And that also doesn't take up full, right? So it is, you're sort of sizing it from the priority out rather than doing it parallel by default.
I think yes, but I'm not quite certain I understand what you're saying.
No, because
I think I have a similar question. It's like, do you do this ongoing forever?
Yeah.
Or is it something temporary you do to get out of something?
It's ongoing.
Okay.
Because we're always getting out of something, right? It's
So to make the metaphor a bit easier, Adrian, you mentioned earlier that sometimes you have tech debt and then you build something on top of it, so you start stacking them. And usually how initiatives go in a company is, well, if we stack them in project management lingo, that means dependencies, and dependencies are bad, and we need to manage dependencies between work items, and then people, what they do is they unstack them, and then they assign them individually, and then it creates this illusion that we're moving faster because 7 people
we don't do
working
that,
on 7 different things. So you're stacking them. You're saying we put this into the team, and the team can do this and then some. And then we add one more thing to the team. But we know that the first thing that we put, that's the highest priority.
I haven't understood that he's saying that they're stacking something.
So what I understood was when you vote on the board, do you pick 1 thing, 5 things?
No.
Is that a negotiation? Is the quantity a negotiation?
I would say no, because it's usually what happens is that people. So whenever we're done with something, we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quantity. And then we decide, okay, how much do we want to do? And then we decide, okay, this is the quant So to give you an idea, we're rebuilding the deal approval. So we have a lot of purchasing people, right? They create deals with suppliers, and these need to be approved throughout the organization. That now goes through mills and whatever. It's really outdated, basically. So we're rebuilding it. We're building a new version of that. That is something that we hopefully finish by the end of this week or maybe next week. It's a topic that we spend a couple of weeks on. There's two people in my team who picked it up. They're working on it together. They also do lots of other stuff, but this is one of their main things they're doing. As soon as it's done, we're going to go into the expert and say, listen, this one's done, and then we're moved off the board, and then the people in the board will ask me, so does that mean there is time to pick up another one? And I'm probably like, yeah, probably. Or there's somebody else from my team is also on the tech board, one of my leads, and either one of us says, yeah, we'll probably can do one more. And then we'll vote for it, given the fact that it has the highest business value and that it could be picked up more or less because the skills that we have now available because something is done will become available for the next one. So sometimes people in my team, I have people on my team who don't like front end. I have people on my team who don't like to do back end. I have people on my team who prefer to do mobile. I have people on my team who like to build services or work with databases. So they have all sort of different preferences, and I have people on my team who love the infrastructure, right? So it depends a bit on what's done, what we can pick up. But that is the only criteria. There's no measurement whatsoever.
So do you have then moving teams, like on this task, 2 people are working together, on the next task one of the people one of the persons then is working with other persons? Okay.
It's a technique. It's a technique that I call Microteams, that basically says, okay, whenever somebody is done with something they were doing, the next thing they'll do is they say, oh, I'm going to pick up that one, whatever that may be, right? It come from the tech board, but it can also be one of the smaller items coming off of the other list of stuff that we want to do. And then I say, I'm going to pick up that one. And somebody else might say, you know what, I'll help you out. I'll join you. And they do. And or somebody asks, could you help me out because I'm stuck here? And people start working on it. And it sort of flows around, basically. As
built
a result,
on responsibility, I would say.
What?
Built on responsibility, ownership and responsibility.
Yeah.
This is how I understand it. In the sense that you don't really have a system like something like Scrum or something like that. Instead, you have like
it's continuous.
You infuse ownership and responsibility so that the people can work in a responsible, mature way and take in ownership of what they do. So the ticket they're working on right now, the feature, is their ownership. So they own that part until it's actually released, right?
Yeah. So as a result, and you're exactly right. So as a result, because we're doing that, and I call it microteams because they shift around all the time, right? So today I was working with my colleague Eugene on something. It's a really nice thing. It's actually not on a board, actually. So we do that too. We have like stuff that we do under the hood just because we like doing it. So as we're actually building a map of Europe with, we're plotting the orders that come in on the map. It's really cool, actually. It's really simple, but we spent last Friday afternoon trying it out, and we perfectionized it, and I had to build another endpoint for it. But now it's working. It's really cool. Actually. So stuff like that we do too, right? So but it's always the responsibility of the people in my team to do what they think is necessary to do something. That also means, because they take ownership of that particular item, is that they are also responsible for, let's say, the product ownership of it, basically. So that means they talk to the business.
Yeah, the life cycle.
Whoever from the business pitched it, that's usually the person that they want to talk to, right? And they do that themselves, which means there is no central product owner. We don't have that, actually. We don't have an Agile coach or whatever either, right? We actually don't do, it's always Agile, but it doesn't fit in any framework. There's always people saying like, oh, you don't do Scrum, so you do Kanban. No, we don't do Kanban either. It's not
Kanban. It's not Kanban either, because you're not.
It doesn't matter. It's not relevant what it is, because it works for us, right? And that's where I get to when it comes to.
So how do you prevent? You said microteams.
Yeah.
How do you prevent the microteams breaking up into just individuals, because that's the key component, right? Is that somebody takes something and then there is somebody free to come and help them. I would imagine
one is also a micro team, right? So
a micro team of one is also a micro team, but how often does it happen that somebody's working alone on something?
It happens. It's yes, that happens, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I prefer to program in pairs or in groups or in mobs or whatever. But that's my preference, and that everybody has that. Mm-hmm. So I have people on my team who more like working on their own, and whenever they need help or they want to touch base with other people, they do, right? But they're more on their own. I have a bunch of people on my team who do that, and I have people who just work with other people all the time. And every one of those approaches is good because it's their approach. So I don't force any approach on them, right? I'm just saying, okay, this is the work we're doing, and so I don't even tell people. I never tell people what to do. I only explain to them where we are and what's coming up the backboard.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's all we do. And there is no process whatsoever.
This is very good because many CTOs, especially in small companies, still think they should micromanage every developer. And that's big problem. So you should stay on the tactical and strategical layer and provide a framework for the operational layer. But inside the operational layer, the developers need to have some room to actually take ownership. Otherwise, when you tell them exactly what they need to do in that moment or what they need to work on in which way, why should they take ownership or think about that? Because you already thought for them, right?
Yes. So. And that exactly this is it's the cultural problem. So if people, it's my experience, if you give people the responsibility and the freedom to arrange that work in the way that they see fit, they'll solve the problem, right? The totally opposite style is like the micromanagement style, where you tell people exactly what to do, how to do it, etc., and when to do it. And in my personal experience, that does not scale very well. But that is not just restricted to tech; it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
If you are in, so I'll tell you one more interesting story. Well, so I'm not going to say the years because people can look up my LinkedIn profile and understand what company it is. So I was working for this company where the CEO of the company, so this was a company with around 450 people in their industry. They're one of the richest companies in the Netherlands, actually. And he acted as a dictator, basically. And that means he micromanaged everything. And that went up to the point, or down to the point, whatever you call it, that when the gardener, so they had a huge office building, and they hired a gardener to do the weeds, right? So, and then that gardener sent an invoice that I did so many square meters of weed. And then he went out with his measuring tape. Well, actually, this is a true story, right? So to give you another example, they had free lunch in the cafeteria. So everybody went for the free lunch. And then he decided it needed to be healthy, right? So every day there was one snack and the rest was more healthy food. He decided every day what the snack was for the next day. It's that level of micromanagement.
He knows
right?
best. He's the boss, right? Oh, yeah.
What he also did, by the way, was really cool, because when I got there, they were like, yeah, we're building this next big new system. This is the company that had the 18 million lines of COBOL and 12 million lines of Java, right? And then the analyst said, well, Mark is right. It's hard to introduce. It changes the company culture. Hi, Mark. And so what happened is that they were going to build this big new system, and I was actually hired originally to teach them a bit about modeling and a bit about Agile. So this is early 2010s, right? And then I asked the analysts. So they had a team of analysts. And when I went into their room the first time, they were all reading stuff on the internet or doing other stuff. None of them was doing any work. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And they said, well, the CEO has created the enterprise data model up to very low level of detail, so we don't have anything to do. And I'm like, what? So this is a big company with a lot of money, and the CEO is making the data model? And then and they say, yeah. and they just didn't do anything. And it was really weird. So and I went, what is this? This is really so in that kind of cultures where you just do what other people. Oh yes, it scales to 50 dev teams. I've seen it, but and actually, yeah. Well, it is a luxury to have only. So I'm just responding to what people are saying. So it is actually a luxury to have a team of 13 people.
But that's a conscious choice, right? Like you're staying small and lean by choice.
Yes, I don't want to have more people on my team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Because you're more productive with less people.
Oh yes, way more
right?
productive.
Because that's the whole point, right? So everybody's telling you, oh, I can't pull this off when I have 50 people. Well, why do you have 50 people? The number of the people that you have is also your responsibility. Like nobody said that you need to have 50 people. Nobody said that you need 250 teams doing safe. Right?
That reminds me of Elon Musk and
no, but it's true. So when companies tend to get bigger and they have more and more teams and they get more into being more and more complicated or complex domains, it's
finally.
No, but the effectiveness of the work you do gets lower and lower, right? It's like you can be highly effective with 13 people, whereas you have 50 teams. It's much more expensive to do stuff, right? And
Sander,
exactly.
You said
what?
I mean, you said that this is no agile framework, it's no methodologies, but it awfully sounds like extreme programming to me. Two pizza teams, collaboration.
Why would you have to attach a label to it?
No, so I'm trying not to, because I also don't say I do extreme
you
programming.
try to do that right now.
Yeah.
No, so it sounds to me like extreme programming from principle. Right, so stay small, stay lean. You're a product engineering company that focuses on uncertainty and innovation, and you just want to move forward. That
is what I would say. What it means to be agile, right? It's like, and then all these people with the stupid frameworks come in, and I don't care about them actually. It's not. I don't. So there's always these discussions on the internet about, you're not doing Scrum right, and you're doing it wrong, and no, you cannot succeed if you. And I'm like, oh, get a life, right? It's like we've been there. We stop with these stupid methodology discussions. It doesn't matter. You need to figure out what works best for you, right? And if you're in a company with 50 teams, as the person responding, that means you probably end up with a different approach than I have, and that's fine. There is no one size fits all.
Yeah, nobody says that you need to do what Sander does at his company.
No, especially not me, right? So there's in the slide decks that every presentation I give, there's a slide deck in there that says, it's called the just caring principle. It says, okay, this works for us. It doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But I can only tell what we are doing, what works for us, and it does not at all mean that it works for a company with 1,200 teams. By the way, I've seen large companies do this. I had these discussions with companies that say, well, we have way more teams. We have 1,500 teams, and this probably doesn't scale. And I'm not very much interested in doing this at scale. So I worked for large consultancies for a major part of my life, for very large clients globally, and they're a different beast. And when I quit the global consultancy that I was working for, I was their global agile thought leader, forever that may be, right? And I quit 10 years ago, and I went freelance. And I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to work for these big companies anymore. Because
I have the same
it's
feeling.
a waste of my time, basically, right? So I get older, right? And the problem with getting older is, if you get older,
no, it's not fun. So it is not fun. As soon as you get in touch, even if you work for a large company already, you already feel this strange artificial stress there everywhere. You can't tell what person is causing this. It is so hard to understand for a human being. This is way outside of the normal territory of a human being. What happens there? But let's face it. Most companies on LinkedIn, most companies on this planet are small companies. So it is very relevant what Sander just said to us. And I really have to say, he provided so much context so that everyone should be able, when listening to this session, when this practice he's practicing is actually working and when not. So if you're a smart person, you should be able to transfer this into your context and say, hey, that could be actually working. So we're doing something very similar with us. So we don't use monotasking as well, because for me, monotasking sounds very complicated because there's too much going on for monotasking. And monotasking, I always have the feeling this is something for rich people, for someone who have a lot of budget there. But I'm probably wrong there. But the stuff like Sander was describing it fits way better in for us as well. So we basically adapt in that week and that day to what actually is on the plate right now, what does make sense. Maybe we even shift that because we saw after 2 days of working on something that something different might make more sense, and we basically shelve something. That happens as well. So being, let's say, we are adopting, but what we don't want to do anymore is, this is the very beginning of our conversation, is to skip quality. So we don't want to shortcut anymore. So whatever we do that with a baseline. And I think this baseline is extremely important to hold. And this is something only the engineers and the engineering team is capable of telling what it should be, and that it is necessary to be in place. And this is something...
You shouldn't even have to explain to whoever is your boss or manager that you're doing this, because it's part of what you do. It's why I said that about the dishwasher I mentioned, right? So if you don't take out the dishes, you cannot put new dishes in there, right? So taking the dishes out is part of what you do. You don't have to explain that to the rest of your family, right? Well, unless you want your kids to do it, but I have a hard time getting that to do that. So
maybe not explaining. That was the wrong terminology there. What I mean is by
justifying. But
not justifying. That's what you shouldn't do. So when you need to justify this, there's a dysfunction already. What I mean is, and this is where I see the CTO so involved in, or should be involved in, is to make sure that this is not necessary. That the business understand why things sometimes take longer, but it's necessary, so we don't need to have way much more time in the future on that single thing in the future. And this is very this outcome, the positive outcome because of those things, needs to be narrated by the CTO or by the team on, let's say, on a daily basis. So it should be normal to do that, and not like, oh, we need to have something, must be now, please do it as fast as possible. I don't care about quality, just get that done. And this should not happen.
No, exactly. So there was somebody saying really nice something. Somebody in the audience said, "Well, yes, but banks and airlines and all these other people, they want to." Yeah, right. The reality is that banks, airlines, and many other examples, they want and have to scale. Well, yes, but the question is always, if you so what happens when these? I worked for banks a lot, by the way, in financial institutions, government agencies, and they're always very slow, right? And there's they're doing all sorts of stuff, which I would say, why are people doing this? And you get to the because they have like big projects, big departments, huge
scale is a symptom of the
and all these people find stuff to do, basically, right? So the question shouldn't be whether they want to scale or not. Whatever. That's so.
Yeah.
Question you should ask as an individual is, do I want to work in an organization like that? If you do, that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people I know work for large government agencies, large banks, and they truly enjoy it. That's fine. I wouldn't, but that's me, right? So it doesn't matter. So if you're not into getting into this large machinery that those organizations are, where delivery is much slower than in a small company, please do, right? There's nothing wrong with it. Although I would say that I would really love to have a look at the government agents, especially here in the Netherlands. I know quite a few of them, and they're highly inefficient, and they're building the wrong things, and it's a pattern, basically. And that's something which is really, that I really truly don't appreciate, because it's government money, right? And should spend it on, well, more important stuff than building
more
IT
responsibly
systems that nobody wants when they are delivered 5 years later, right? That's just terrible practice. However, if you want to work in an organization like that, that's fine. I don't. I did, and I stopped doing it. And that for me, that was a big change. So in 20, well, let me put it this way: I had a huge burnout in 2009, 2010. As a result, just to do the short story, as a result, I needed to refocus, right? And then I realized that it's the same pattern, that there's always more that you might want to do. So your appetite is always bigger than the time you have, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so what is important and what is not to me as a person, as me? So for me, that's my kids, my parents, of which only my mom is still alive. And she has dementia, so I spend time with her, right? It's my relationship with my girlfriend. It's traveling, because I love to travel. And I take the nice thing for me is that I do talks and workshops and stuff at the international conference. So I get to travel. It's cool. And the next thing is writing code and my friends. That's all that matters to me. So if I have to choose between spending 2 hours in a meeting in which I play no vital role, I choose to write code for 2 hours instead of going to the meeting. Or alternatively, I still go to the meeting, but I open up my laptop and I just write code during the meeting. That happens too. So I stopped. It's not so much waste, but I started focusing on what I wanted to do much more. As a result, I realized that I did not want to work for large organizations because I spent a lot of my time sitting in meetings in which I didn't want to be. And it's not that I have anything against all meetings. It's just that a lot of these meetings, I just didn't want to be in them. And
we had Stefan Schmidt on a few weeks ago, and he coaches a lot of CTOs, and he also said that, and I'm sort of paraphrasing to simplify his point, and he said basically that CTOs shame themselves into just being bureaucrats, and they sort of eliminate all the things they want to do, have to do, and enjoy doing from their day-to-day, and then just they become these like Jira machines to stakeholders.
There is this big notion going on that on LinkedIn as well, that CTOs are business persons, which is actually right. They are part of the business. But they are part of the development as well. And you can't just separate that. So the larger the company becomes, probably the less connected you are to the actual development. But this is what I personally like on small to medium-sized businesses, even in some medium-sized businesses, you're just a handful of developers, and it is still that you can enjoy your job, even as a CTO. And this is the reason why I don't want to, step up the ladder in some sort of artificial big, system. I call them always systems, because there is something behind that you can't really understand as a human being. You don't know. You had the examples with the meetings. You don't know why you're sitting there, but those meetings occur every day, and you don't know why. And you have less impact on the outcome. So as a CTO in a smaller business, or even as an engineer, you have a direct outcome. If you decide something today, you will see the result tomorrow. Yeah. And that's actually quite interesting.
I've had the good fortune here. Here's a small story from my experience, is that I've experienced 5 different startups scaling up successfully. Build a product, awesome, good traction, now let's scale. And I have witnessed constantly this appetite, to use the word again, this appetite to grow from like a really functional, I like your terminology, Sander, like a group of micro teams that work really well and have basically an equivalent of what you described as being a tech board, to grow to this bloated bureaucracy that is almost reminiscent like having an internal agency. That you just quickly grow, and it splits way too fast. The engineering culture does not mature, and it grows and splits, and you get this like internal agency units to serve basically way too many stakeholders at the same time. And I've seen this constantly going from 13 plus people to 55 within 18 months, a year and a half. Yeah. Every time this happens at this scale, at this speed, there is this I'm not saying it always goes wrong, but the temptation is there. The appetite is there. And then the pressure creates incentives that prevent the conditions that would nurture the next generation of microteams.
Yes. So it's again, it's a cultural thing, right? So if companies are startups and they want to grow fast, what they usually think is that in order to grow fast, you need to do more things.
Yeah.
But
you need to actually
it's
say
also
no
not
to more
forced to say,
things.
No, we're not going to do a lot more things because we can't handle this. A lot of startups break at that point in time. But it's the alternative is to make choices to focus on that what's important and just do that, right? So the it's quite interesting. So I have friends who are developers at really large e-commerce companies here in the Netherlands, like the largest one with 4 billion euro revenue per year, and he's like, how can you build a complete e-commerce platform, because we're actually doing that, with 13 people? And then I'm like, well, we're not only building it, we're also maintaining the previous one and moving away from that too. That's even more. And to be honest, it's always about focus. It's always about, so if you focus on the stuff that is most vital to the company, and that is what the tech board is doing, right? You hardly ever get into trouble about people who want to do more or go faster, because this is the speed we can handle. And if you want to handle
because you're giving them evidence that you're not pulling their leg. You're not saying no for no reason, right?
We are delivering, and that's the thing, right? So whenever it gets on the board, it will be delivered. I don't know exactly when, but that depends on all the other stuff that we're doing. So it's always a matter of priorities, and because they are allowed with us to set the priorities, but over the whole company, not just one person doing that, like the COO or the CEO or whoever is doing that in a lot of companies. It's that board of people together that decide on what is, given the strategy, which is decided upon by the management team, given the strategy, what is the best things we can spend our time on, given all this stuff on the board. We throw stuff on the board too, right? It's like before.
Is this your primary advice that you would give other leaders, like other CTOs? Like, just try to find your equivalent of like a tech board. Because is it democratic? Like, are there veto powers? We didn't really go into detail. Like, is it?
Yes, there's people who have a stronger vote in it than other people.
Right.
That it's usually, if the CEO is in the board. In our case at iBoot, it's the COO who has the strongest voice in it, and for good reasons, because he knows a lot and he's very smart and he knows how to do stuff, and so he has a strong vote in it. But also, it's largely dependent on the strategy, right? People in the tech board themselves come up with saying, okay, I have this idea, but it doesn't really fit our strategy. Should we discuss? And then we discuss, and when it doesn't, then we probably decide not to do so. So there's like 5 questions that you need to ask when somebody pitches it. And first of all is, does it help us reach our strategy, our dotted horizon, right? That's the most important one. The second thing, isn't it too big? Is it small enough, right? So if it's too big, that means, let's say you propose a project that will take half the team for about a year.
And it'll also take their voting powers away, right? Because they can't interrupt the project until it's done.
No, we don't do that, right? It's still...
No, but if the project is too long, that would be the consequence, right?
No, but we just discuss, and then we say, no, this is way too big. Try to investigate what's the first part of this that we really could do, right? And then come back and pitch that one. So that's something we decided upon. So the next thing is, it should be actionable. So that basically up to me and the other guy from my team looking at this and like, we can do this. Actually, it does fit into what we're doing. Sometimes it really doesn't, right? Like this morning we discussed adopting an external loyalty platform and just pushing it in, and marketing says, we can just push it in, and we're like, no, it needs to integrate with a whole lot of stuff that we're doing, so it's not that easy. And so those discussions, right? But we have them in public. And then the fourth thing is basically, the most important question is, do we really need this now? That's the question I always ask with everything. Is this the most important thing that we can do with our time now? If it's not, it goes onto the someday maybe column, which is a column of stuff that we agree that it helps us to reach the dotted horizon. It is actionable. It's not too big. But there's other stuff that's more important now. So that's about urgency, basically. And yeah.
I'm waiting for number 5.
Well, yeah, number 5 is basically the someday maybe column, but there is no number 5 actually. It's true. Okay. You're right.
But wait, so the 4 things were: does it help us achieve our strategy?
Yep.
Is it the right size?
Yep.
So is it too big specifically? Is it too big to be realistic? Is it actionable? And number 4 is now the right time? Like,
yes.
Is this the more? No. Is this the most urgent thing right now? You know, in a context of other things that we are also discussing.
So we're already agreeing it's important, but is it also urgent?
Yeah.
How much do you involve your actual clients into the process?
In my case, the clients are the people in the business, right? So
what about vendors? What about when you're integrating
vendors,
with some
people who buy your software, actually?
Because I imagine you're like a multi-vector marketplace, right? Like you're also integrating with other people.
We're building it in a way that we can do it, which is actually against my advice to build stuff that you don't need yet. But this is the only thing. So building something multi-tenant is the only thing we allow ourselves to do that we didn't need it when we started doing this. So no, we're not a we are not a marketplace. So we do have suppliers. So it's basically we buy stuff and then we sell it, and we have daily new deals. That's the business concept of Hybrid, which is a very interesting concept because it the consequence is that most regular packages that you could buy off the shelf don't really fit the pattern, and so we have to do it ourselves. Basically, we found a reason for doing it ourselves, and it's just because it's a lot of fun to do it ourselves. But so we're not a marketplace yet. That doesn't mean we're not looking into this because we're a company, right? So so we already said when we started doing this 3 years ago, yes, we're an e-commerce company. However, I think we should evolve into a tech company. So now we sort of agreed in
be some kind of e-commerce platform or some kind of SaaS provider for one of the vectors.
Eventually. It's not very close on the horizon now, although we are going to do some pilots with it really soon. I hope.
So it doesn't fit the 4th criteria. It's not the right time.
It's not the right time, right? True.
Yeah.
So but we did agree. So we are investigating newer business models, of which I'm not allowed to talk about, right? But so we are going to pilot in the next couple of weeks, or probably after the holidays, to make sure that we have our platform in order to be able to do that. So that's like a small pilot that we're going to do, and we do stuff
like an experiment, or is it more mature than that?
No, we call it an experiment. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as Adrian mentioned in our private chat backstage, if you're not to do the apex of the session and then check out the last comments. So last 30 minutes, if you have any comments, now is the time to ask us anything, especially Sander. You can ask Adrian and me next week as well, but Sander is, primetime guest right now.
Don't ask me, ask Sanders.
Yeah, ask Sander. Sander, if you're now, let's say, like rewind the clock, and you're now in that founding engineer scaling up the company, and you don't have a tech board, and you get to set it up. Like in what order, like what relationships come first? Who do you convince? How do you weasel the tech board into the company that might be resistant to it?
So the main trigger for being able to change stuff is when companies get stuck. So the amount of stuckness, or the percentage of stuckness, actually decides how much slack you will get to change stuff, right? So the funny story about
in which direction? More stuck, less slack, or the other way around?
No, the other way around, actually. More stuck means more slack. So if you have if you have a good idea, right? So about 7 years ago, the COO of iBoot approached me for the CTO role here, and at that point I had 3 other offers, and I took one of the other ones. The main reason not for going to iBoot, because I already liked it as a company. I knew it already as a company, because is that I thought that the problems they had were not big enough. And that's not to be arrogant, but if it's not big enough, the urgency to change is not big enough. So I investigated with the COO, and I said, well, I rate your problems as a 4 on a scale of 10, which means you should not hire me because, well, you can still manage with what you're doing right now, probably.
Yeah.
So whenever the shit hits the fan, really, and if you go to like on a scale of 10 to an 8 or a 9, that is a good point to hire me. Not because I'm brilliant, but because I like situations in which
they will take working with you more seriously.
Yes, and so introducing stuff like this, introducing a highly autonomous tech department in a company that might be a little bit more hierarchical or organized, or setting up something like a tech board, which requires a lot of involvement from everyone in the business, and also commitment. That requires commitment from leadership, right? But it also requires commitment from tech. So when I got here, for instance, wait, let me finish the story. So like 3 years later, after the smart energy company was like squashed or the smart thermostat company was squashed by the large energy company, the team that I was working with there and I were like, we should actually do something else as a team. And at that point, IBOT came back and said, well, we think that our problems are now much higher on the scale. So I said, elaborate. And he did. And I'm like, okay, this is like an 8.5 to a 9. So this is a good point in time to actually change stuff. And so there has to be like, there has to be a point that problems are big enough in a company to actually be able to force some change. If they're not big enough, then the motivation, the rationale, the urgency, they're lacking, right? So that means you can only change it a little bit. But if companies get really, really stuck, that's the point where you can actually make a change and do something.
But that's risky, right? Because I imagine if it goes to 9.5 or 10, then the company is also slowly under an existential threat, and they actually might run out of money to actually hire you to actually implement all the changes that you want to do.
Well, yeah, true. So they should be just in time, but that's I don't know. It's not like I'm gonna go to companies, to an arbitrary company, say, okay, how big are your problems, right? So it's like it works the other way around, and it doesn't have to be me, right? But it's basically, if you're in a role like this to be helping or be a catalyst in the change, then it works best if the problems are big enough, right? It's like, otherwise nobody in a company will ever do something because it's not necessary. Problems aren't big enough. It still works, right? So yeah, why would you change it? It still works.
So if I were to label it, what you're looking for is an incentive to have focus.
Yes.
That's the criteria. Like if I spin it from the positive side, you're looking for a concrete incentive to be focused.
Needs to be an incentive. So it's exactly like when I had this burnout in 2009, it's exactly the same pattern. It's like I had to figure it out because, well, I couldn't even, the first day of my burnout, I did a talk at an event the night before, and I got back home. I had an appointment the next morning. I couldn't even move my legs, right? I was totally flat out. And that's when the incentive, as you call it, the rationale for changing stuff is big enough. And that goes for everything. It goes into your personal life. It also goes into companies. It's the same pattern. It's like if the incentive is big enough, people usually want to do the change. Give you one more example in my personal life. About 5 years ago, I was like, so my dad had cancer, prostate cancer, which all men at a certain age will get. I was like, I went to the doctor and said, well, could you measure me up too? And I'll test my blood. And he said, well, you know what, we're just going to test everything that we can do. And the next day I got a call from his assistant saying, okay, you do have a double appointment at the doctor's tomorrow. I'm like, no, I don't. And he says, now you do. And so I went in and he said, well, you have diabetes type 2. I'm like, okay. So it runs in my family. So I have, so my mom has it, my dad had it. So it was there was probably the time that I could get it. And I'm like, okay, this is an incentive to change stuff, right? Because diabetes is a serious disease, and it causes blindness, for instance, if you don't treat it properly, and that means that I had to change my life basically, again, and so I did more or less. So I started moving more, eating more healthy, less candy, less cookies, etc., etc.
Less cookies.
It's less cookies. Yeah,
Stop. No cookies. No cookies.
So again,
the snackable CTO came out of his cave. Talk about cookies.
So it's about how urgent is it, right? How serious are your problems? And it's the same with organizations, right? If leadership does not recognize that they have problems,
and
they don't have problems actually. So that's the thing.
And to give weight to what you just said, to your metaphor, like the recognition, the diabetes was already there. Yeah. It's your awareness of it that created the incentive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And your acceptance of it that created the incentive.
Acceptance is really important here, right? So if in a leadership team, people don't think they have a problem. So I was the CTO for a company when I went in, and they said everything works fine, it's great, and we're good, except for the stupid developers. All right. So what's wrong with them? And they said, well, we taught them that they needed to do Scrum, and they don't want to do it. And they're stupid. And I'm like, probably a bit more subtle, but the CEO of that company had no idea.
You're having audio issues somewhere.
Me?
I don't know, but we have audio issues somewhere.
Yeah,
now it's good.
They're gone. Yeah.
Really?
It's you, Adrian.
The microphone.
Yeah. Switched microphone.
I have a ventilation. No, I have a ventilation on actually. I think the microphone is too good for this.
The noise cancelling killed itself.
Oh, there it goes.
There it goes.
What were we saying?
So the acceptance to it, and you said the developers are stupid because they're not doing. Scrum.
So he said it's the developers, they're stupid, and he literally said that actually, and I said, well, probably a little bit more subtle, but it's and for all the time I spent in that company, we tried to convince him, and it wasn't just me, it was basically the whole management team and all the people in product owner roles and the lead techs and the architects. They all tried to convince him that they were going down the rabbit hole, and he was focused so much on a project that he initialized and they wanted to finish. That project would never finish, and it ate up all of their resources, like people, the money, the time, and everybody in the company outside of him agreed that they should really stop this project. And I literally wrote an advice to him about 4 pages of arguments as the CTO. Listen, if we continue to do this, it's going to break. It's never going to work. You can never productize this thing that you're building. And so this is a company of not realizing, being convinced about the size of the problems they had.
Yeah. So it's breaking rule number 2, right? Because I've seen this in action. Like your 4 rules are very useful, because I've seen companies have, like, let's say, a senior management role, and they're doing everything except number 2. So every project that the board is deciding over is too large.
Yeah.
So everybody is stressed out of their mind when they get to vote again, because they won't get to vote again until it's done.
Yes.
So they need to know when it's done, and then they hassle the developers for estimates.
Exactly.
And then it takes longer, and then they feel powerless.
Yeah.
Senior management team feels powerless when the condition was it's done when it's done, and it takes longer than you said. Well, we can't vote.
Yeah.
Now we need to veto vote to cancel the project, to kill it.
Yeah.
But it was our project, right?
Yeah.
Like, you do it once, shame on me, but do it twice. It's like something needs to change.
I'll give you 2 nice examples of this. So they're really short stories. So I'm doing an audit on a company that builds software in the logistics market, and they started rebuilding the UI of their product. They're a product, right? So they started rebuilding the UI of their product because they want to move to a single stack, which is good. I truly appreciate that idea. I'm doing it too. And
like monorepo style, like a full stack system, in TypeScript.
No, monorepo isn't. But they're trying to do that, but it's not the problem? No, to a single tech stack, meaning everything is written in the same programming language.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if you have a small team, you don't want to have 4 different programming languages, right? We're doing it too, actually. We're moving everything to TypeScript. So,
which is the only language where this is possible right now.
Yes, it is actually.
It is.
It also happens to be my favorite language. So yeah.
Yes. Same.
So the thing is, so what they decided to do is to rebuild their front end in React and TypeScript. And
I see where this is going.
They spent.
I like that.
No, it's from a technical perspective really cool, but they spent 7 or 8 months on it, and as a result, the product people, because they spent all the time, so they're a small development team, they spent all their time on doing that migration to React. Meaning in those 8 months, and it's still not feature complete, in those 8 months, product was not able to get features
exercise their power.
Right?
Yeah.
Meaning this project was too big, right? And the other example is in the management team at iBoot, we also have the tendency of defining projects that are too big. And if they're too big, we don't execute on it.
What do you mean define? Like, do you call it out as this is an example of too big? Let's write it down for future reference, like to create precedents.
No. So in the projects that we tend to want to do as the management team at iBoot are kind of big, meaning it takes a year and a half to do them, right? We just had a pitch earlier this week about one of the managers wanted to, let's say, create something, build something. It wasn't necessarily tech, but and he said, well, yeah, if we start doing it now, we'll be done second half of 2025. I'm like, it's too big, right? Define the first step. So we're now taking the same approach to making stuff smaller. We're trying to get the management team to do that too, right? And to define. So, okay, I appreciate that you want to do this and have this done by the end of 2025. So what's the first step? And if they say, well, we cannot define the first step, that means that
we're not doing the project.
It's just not, we just don't do it. And not because we said, no, we can do it, but it's too big. Nobody can handle that big size product.
The event modeling community does something similar. They try to get you to define the project and then start with the first step that it's closer to the right side. Because the project will always bloat from the middle, and you want to be on the right side of the expanding bloat. Like you want to be on the user-facing, revenue-generating side of the bloat, not on the side where the React migration just keeps being a moving target and not moving in the right direction.
I said so the CTO in this company that was doing it, I asked him, so why are you doing this, and how can it be that with a small development team in a let's say startup scale up company, you have 8 months to build a React front end to something that was already working, right? I don't necessarily agree with the technology.
There's no added value to the initiative. There's no immediate added value to the initiative.
How did you get the company to decide that this was a good idea?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's technically a bad idea, but they should have said, well, we're going to spend half of our time on doing this and the other half of the time, or whatever percentage, into still building features into it.
Yeah.
And they just stopped doing that. I'm like, how can you do that?
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Well, if it's the only thing you have to do, yeah, sure, but it never is, right?
It may be the only thing you have to do when you're making the decision, but along those 8 months, new ideas will pop up, and then if you don't have maneuverability, well.
So my advice to that company would also be is if you make decisions about what tech is working on, especially because they have an even smaller tech team than we have, is please do not make decisions on your own. Not the CEO, not the CTO. Make them funded, right? So you don't have to call it the tech board. Previous company I worked for called it the product board. I'm fine with it. Doesn't matter what it's called. I don't care, right? But make decisions that that you can carry, that you can get commitment for throughout the company. So if you say, I'm going to build a React front end, fine. If product agrees with that, if the CEO agrees with it, if finance agrees with it, if they're all okay with it, then it's fine, right? But I would guess it wasn't, actually, to be honest. So make those decisions and break stuff down into stuff that you can actually handle, at least in month-sized chunks, more or less, right? You don't have to do estimates or t-shirt sizing or stupid Fibonacci, whatever.
No, that's too. It's too far. It's too far off in only the engineering.
We have actually done exactly that with React, with migration to React from PHP JavaScript plain to React by doing basically a strangler fig pattern. So we added a new feature in React, and that basically we federated with the old one, and still we could develop in the old one and in the new one. And at some point in time, we step by step, like we had time, basically the entire old front end disappeared, and the federator was turned off because there was only a React application then. And that worked fine because then you could add features to both and add new value. That was good.
And you do that as a risk management strategy, not as a productivity strategy. Because not doing it would be more productive, but you can't manage the risk that the project won't take 8 months or 3 months or 2 months.
Exactly.
Too long.
We did pretty much the same thing actually. And the nice thing is that we needed to get some rationale for the company to understand that we were doing this, and that happened when we decided to, or marketing decided to create a full redesign for the website and the app. And that was the motivation for us to say, okay, we're going to do this page by page, piece by piece, and we're going to build it up from there. And we started with one page, and then when we mixed it.
And the first page is the most complicated because you get to get the layouts right and the settings and the menus, and then you have to make compromises.
Yeah. Well, it's true, and so we did that. And we did it page by page, and then eventually got to the point that we needed to migrate the checkout, which was the most complicated part of it, and we took quite some time. But we did that step by step as well, right? And that's what I would have recommended to the company I was talking about earlier too, right? And I'm going to recommend that to them to do that. So, but always focus on the stuff that is most vital and actionable.
And the right size.
And the right size.
A technology migration should not end the value stream or pause the value stream for X month. So if it's necessary for some weeks because you need to build a foundation for this migration, it's understandable. It's an investment, but you shouldn't do this over a month. That doesn't make sense. It's not necessary.
As general advice, I would always say you should not sanction. You should not give your blessing to initiatives or projects that take away your ability to release frequently, to release new things or old things fixed to your customers. Even if it means you're doing a rewrite and then there's a bug in the old system, but if that's
a technical rewrite of stuff should never be an argument on its own, right?
Exactly.
It needs to be a rationale for. So for us, the rationale was if we have this new design for the website and the app, conversion goes up by X%, right? It did, by the way, so that was good.
Awesome. But, we have some appreciation from our audience. Mark mentions, today I found out I want to work for organizations that are in trouble. Thanks, Sander. Makes a lot of sense the way you explained it.
Thank you.
And we have Anhil, one of our regulars. I personally prefer saying risk escalation over technical debt.
Yeah.
Since you mentioned risk, debt can be paid. Risk is risk.
Yeah, that's often a point that technical debt is actually something you don't really pay back. It's like you work it off and you try to reduce it over time.
Technical debt is good. To use that analogy, you just gave me the idea, right? To combine the metaphor. Technical debt is really good if it reduces the risk. Technical debt is never good if it also increases your risk factor, because then you're just taking on more debt and it increases your risk, which means that you're increasing the likelihood that you won't pay it off and that you will want more of it.
Personally, I think we should stop talking about technical debt. What does that mean actually? Because it's so if I look, so I used Ward Cunningham's original definitions about technical debt in my talks, and it's about every time you take shortcuts, you take out a debt and you need to pay interest on it, right? So, but the problem with technical debt is that it's like it's always people have the tendency to say, yes, we really should fix this, but if nobody ever does, why is it debt, right? So there's
You pay back debt, actually.
And it also makes it sound like it's like a discrete financial problem,
Actually,
rather than looking at it from like a business perspective of, well, to what degree are you stuck as a business? And to make it just concrete, like, to what degree are you stuck as a business?
It's so. In my current team and also my previous teams, we never discuss something that is technical debt, right?
Yeah, same.
There's work that we need to do that includes making sure that the code is okay, and that includes continuously improving our code. We do that all the time. Everybody on my team can change anybody else's code.
Yeah.
So to put it in a little bit more technical perspective, what we do is we do a microservices, also micro apps architecture. So we split everything in small functional components, including our front end and back end, our workers, everything. There's now currently about 130 small repos. Everybody owns all of them, so everybody can change any of them.
Refactor fearlessly is a phrase we use often in this channel.
Sorry, what?
We refactor fearlessly.
Yeah, we always do. So it's and the only structure that is in there is that they all have the same software architecture. So any one of those 130 code bases that I would open, if I would open them right now, the structure is always the same. So the different roles are always the same. The different ways that we do stuff, and that's the only thing that's always the same. So we recognize each other's code. Or we recognize each other's architecture, basically, and that's why anybody on the team can change everything. That's the only way to do it, right? And we have high levels of code coverage, of course, and pipelines that fail if the code coverage is not high enough. Pipelines that run all the way to production, by the way. So every time I check something in, it will go to production. Well, that is if all the tests at all levels and deployments and go right.
Rolling forward.
Yeah. And we rarely ever roll back. That's like 3-4 times a year that we do that on stupid occasions. It does happen, but it's not a lot. So that means that that increases the ability of the team to work forward. So everybody who wants to change anybody else's code to make it better, please do, right? And we do that all the time. I strongly believe that although I write a lot of software, that if you would look at my contributions over the year, it would be cool to interest that I would assume that I take more code out than I add to our code bases.
CodeScene can give you a heuristic of this. Like it does very good forensics on a code base history.
Yeah, I talked to them about this, and it's
Adam Thornhill is a different kind of.
He is also a very nice guy. So it's
I spoke with Mate yesterday about his architecture podcast. He mentioned he ran into you on Devox a few days ago.
Who?
Mate. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name correctly.
I run into a lot of people. It's like
I can't pronounce his name. Mati Yederziewski.
I'm not sure where you're typing now, but it's a.
I just looked up his name because I can't pronounce his
name. No, so I a part of what I do in my life is because I like to travel and because I like to share my ideas with other people. So I do a lot of talks at international conferences, right? So,
but you're basically the face of Devox, like on every single Devox, I think. You're giving keynotes.
No, so I did a few this year again. So but it's always nice. So going to conferences is nice because yes, I can travel, and I love to travel, right? So any invite that I get from countries that I haven't been to before, I almost always say yes. But it's like. And it also allows me to talk to people like Adam Thornhill, for instance, right? And I love meeting him and other people. And
I saw you co-hosted, like you shared a stage with your partner.
Yes, yeah.
What was that like?
We do that quite a lot, actually. So Kim, my girlfriend, she we worked together for 2 different companies, and in the meantime, we got into a relationship. But we worked for 2.5 years already together before we didn't actually like each other at the start because she was a very structured mind, and I came from this really agile background, so it didn't really fit. But we somehow made it fit, and we've been together for quite some time now. And at some point, she started doing talks at events too. She's actually CTO for a high-end consultancy here in the Netherlands. And at some point, we were like, there was an event in Wrocław in Poland that she got invited to, and she's like, oh, we can do a talk together if you like. That would be cool. And then we figured out to do a talk, and that talk is called Flow. It's called Flow, the officially worst software development methodology in history, and it's been the keynote for quite a few conferences.
That's
already.
the one I saw, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. I like it doing that a lot. It's very funny, and it's actually it's about all the bad things you can do. So the starting point is basically, if you're a consultant, how can you make sure that you stay on projects as long as possible, right? And how can you make the most money out of this stuff? So it means taking together all the bad ideas in agile approaches and agile methodologies, put them together, and then squeeze that into a new methodology.
And run the hamster wheel into perpetuity.
And of course,
flywheel practices.
Yeah.
I have never met a tech couple where both of you are also CTOs. Like that's rare.
It is. I assume it's rare, yes. But it's quite funny. So we've done this talk for the last 5 years on all continents already, and it's still that conferences are inviting us to do that talk. And it's a really funny talk to do. It's hard to plan because we talk in turns, and so we have to measure it out.
But I can tell you're having a lot of fun on stage. It's coming from the heart. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so we're now thinking about doing a sequel to it, but we haven't figured out what to do yet. So it's not a work in progress yet. It's just some thoughts that we should probably do this. But she does a lot of talks at conferences too, right? So we quite often get to travel together. So for instance, next week we're traveling to South Africa to do some talks in Cape Town, both of us, and we take time to travel around. Of course, it's a summer holiday basically. So
great time.
Yeah.
Any closing remarks, gentlemen? We're about coming up on time. Comment section has...
It was a great session, actually.
Phil?
It was a really good... So I think there was quite a lot to consume. And Dennis, it's actually your session. So probably a wrap-up of that session would be a very interesting thing written down, if you like to do that.
Yeah.
The topics you were talking about, Sander, they were very much like the topics I know from my personal experience. E-commerce, small teams, same methodology, same way of thinking, same way of handling things.
Yeah.
Even down to that we do everything in little microservices and micro frontends and stuff like that. So I think the reason is you have experienced things that I have experienced, the same challenges, and those were the logical results of doing so. That was interesting for me to listen to, because most people I hear of are doing some different things. So it was refreshing to hear someone doing it like I do.
One of us.
Exactly. So this is what I wanted to say. So it was a very interesting session, very insightful, and especially for people in the same area to learn something from that, because I think it is still pretty hard when you are in the trenches yourself to navigate and understand what is the consequence of my decision, of my doing. That is not obvious. So I paid a lot of money in my time just to learn it the hard way.
So did I.
Yeah.
And it really reminds me. So this is thanks to you for the great conversation, guys. It's a really good reminder that I really should write a book on this topic now, and I should probably do this at some point. I so much enjoyed writing code more than I like writing text, but it's a topic that deserves.
Take the transcripts from this episode and have play around with ChatGPT.
Well, yes, it's also the talk. So the focus of the talk and of my train of thoughts changes all the time, right? It's like from doing stuff. I'm actually experimenting now with the management team here in ways that I was like, oh yeah, I probably should put that into a book or a talk as well. but I just don't have the time for it. It's like writing code takes up a lot of time, and traveling, and kids, and my mom, and my girlfriend, and watching football with my football team.
Well, you got to have the right incentive to be focused on this.
Yes, it's true. And I haven't figured that one out yet.
Stephen Pressfield, my favorite author, is writing in one of his books, telling that if you write 5 days a week for 1 hour, you are already a full-time writer, because after 1 year you have created a book.
Yeah.
And that's something we should be aware of, that it doesn't take then 10 years to write a book. It takes probably a tech book, probably even less than this.
No, yes,
as long as it's not agile, because it doesn't
matter.
I need to spend 1 hour writing in my articles a day. That would be a start, right? So.
I had this manuscript. I wrote it down. I was like, if I don't write it down quickly, if I don't make it into a short project, I will never finish it. So I wrote a first version of this manuscript during COVID in about 3.5 months. And then what I expected or feared that would happen, it actually happened, is that I stopped writing it. It was almost finished. It's still readable. I think I gave it to you, Dennis, at some point in time, right? But it's like, and then if you let it go for a bit, your mind changes about what you should do, right? And actually, I went into discussions with O'Reilly about it, and with Pragmatic Programmers about publishing the book. I had the contract with Pragmatic Programmers, but that was so I put in the wrong table of contents for the proposal, focusing it on one topic, and then my mind shifted into no, this is not the whole story. I want to tell the whole story. And then O'Reilly said, well, we don't sell books about Agile anymore, which is good. And then I'm like, it's not a book about Agile. And only after the whole process with O'Reilly backfired, I realized, I looked at the manuscript and I'm like, wait, there's way too much on Agile in this stuff. There should only be one chapter that says Agile transformations suck and they get you stuck, so don't do it. But other than that, it should not be about Agile, because we talked about Agile and Scrum and all the stupid stuff long enough in this world. So the book should just, I wanted to remove every thought about it. So that's where I'm now, basically. It's now more like, it's probably going to turn much more into a management book.
I recall discussing this with you, but I'm not sure you sent it to me. And if you haven't, I would love to see it. And if you sent it to me and I didn't read it, I apologize. And I would like a second chance.
I don't remember either, but it's like
drop us a file on LinkedIn or an email, and we'll...
The version it has now is outdated. I need to rewrite it. And I want to write it in a much shorter, more compact way, but still full of stories. Basically, the way I speak, right?
Did you see what Kent Beck did?
Sorry?
With Tidy First? Did you see what Kent Beck did with Tidy First? He had a similar problem. Like he never really, he struggled to finish books. So what he did, he started a newsletter with the same title as the book.
Yeah.
And as an incentive, he said, if you become a paid subscriber, I will give you advanced chapters every week. And then the interest was so high that he essentially wrote each chapter every week and sent them out to his audience. And then that motivated him to actually get them written down and then focus his energies mostly on the editorial process, because that's where the hard stuff actually happens.
That is in the right order. Work, right? So that's the thing I have against writing books is, and that's why I probably stick to traditional publishers, right? Because you can also publish yourself. However, if you publish yourself, no, true. So I don't want to call it Agile. It's not.
Let's not label it.
Should just be a management book, right? Not so much, or a leadership book, or whatever.
Leadership, product engineering, leadership,
something like that, something in that area. But I need to take it out of that. People say, "Oh, you're coming from an Agile background, so it's a book about Agile." No, it's not. We should stop talking about Agile by now, and it's. But yeah, so I can publish it myself, of course, but then I need to do a lot more work, and I like it when publishers do the editing part of it, because they're much better at it than I am, and I don't want to get into all of these endless discussions. So I wrote a bunch of books, right? So I've been to this process before, and it's a lot of work, right? It's people underestimate how much work it is to write an actual good book. And that's probably also what's holding me back, is that the project is too big, right? I don't want to do big projects. So I haven't figured out a way to break this into smaller stuff, but maybe the Kent Beck approach is a good idea. I'll think about that. Yeah, could be.
Hmm.
Good thoughts. Good thoughts.
Well, on that note, I'm very happy that you agreed to join us today. I really enjoyed this. So thank you so much, Sander, for being with us. Thank you for the live audience for being so active and, sharing your praise, your comments, questions, challenges.
Loyalty, those kind of things.
Adrian, thank you so much for sort of pushing the envelope on structuring these episodes much more. And that sort of motivated me to reach out to Sander much more in advance so we could plan it, so we could be very calm about these Wednesday streams. So yeah.
But I still can't. I can't think of not eating cookies anymore. So that's.
I have problems with that too. I have to be honest. So I don't. It's not something. So like smoking, I stopped completely in one afternoon.
But cookies, it's like.
Cookies is much harder. So is beer, by the way. So, but to me,
you just don't have the right incentives yet, Adrian.
No.
It'll come.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sugar-free cookies, something like that.
Oh no. We should.
Well, there's some nice ones actually. I actually tried that, but there's still fat in that too, so that doesn't help either, right? So it's like, yeah.
Oh well. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
I could talk for another hour, but it is very hot in here, and I'm afraid the camera will overheat or my PC will overheat. So I need to like hard.
Well, I actually have to
I think I will overheat. Yeah.
I have to get on my bicycle anyway because we have an important match tonight, right? So.
Okay. Well, good luck then.
I hope we beat England tonight, and then go.
Are you going to How to Web in Bucharest?
Yes.
I'll see you there then in October.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Well then, talk soon. See you there.
Cool.
Thank you for today.
You too.
Will, to our audience, I will send you off with some gentle elevator music, and we'll see you next week. Next week we're talking again about how to shorten the release cadences and why that's a good idea and when it's not. So, see you then. Thank you so much for being with us.
Dennis, Adrian, you should invite Kim to do this talk as well, my girlfriend.
Sorry?
You should invite Kim, my girlfriend, to talk with you guys too.
Okay. Thank you for the recommendation. I will take that to heart.
Yeah.
Can you just send the link of the profile to our LinkedIn's and then
we'll take care of it. Yeah. Awesome.
Sure.
And next time you could just come, both at the same time then.
Yeah.
We have a quarter more in the screen right now.
As a special episode.
Yeah, that'll
be a lot of fun.
Might be a good idea, but invite her first, right? It's like
okay. Awesome. I'm putting the music on now. End. Ciao.
Hello.
Goodbye, everyone.